Hello everybody, my name is Joshua and I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Coffee, Cats, and King, where we will discuss books both new and old. I will share with you pictures of my cats will make you wish they were your cats. I will drink enough coffee for me and everybody watching. In honor of the season, my mug is a little ghosty with his mouse friend. I'm drinking a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup iced coffee, which is totally unusual for me, and yes, it tastes just as weird as it sounds. The shirt is compliments of my awesome father-in-law. It's a classic Gibson shirt. As the title suggests, I'm here with a September wrap-up. September, not October, as one would expect at the beginning of November. See, I'm just a teensy bit behind on filming these things. In typical Joshua fashion, I disappeared for a while, and now I'm back, giving it another go. We've been through it 100 times. I don't know how it's going to go. But we're just going to see. I'm going to upload when I can and hope that maybe things in my life settle down a little bit so that I can start doing this again regularly. And I thought about skipping September since I was so far behind, but I was looking at it and I had some really great reads that month. So I really wanted to be able to share it with you guys. And that's what I miss more than anything, is just talking about these books with you folks. It's just not the same, even if I'm to comment on some of your videos or try to talk to you through the comments of another person's videos. It's just not the same. So I'm here, I'm going to give it another go, and in a couple of days, hopefully, if all goes well, you will see the October wrap-up following this one. So here we are. I'm going to quit blabbering and I'm going to get on into the books. Alright, so book number 1 for the month of September was The Mad Scientist's Guide to World Domination, edited by John Joseph Adams. Basically, if you read any type of fiction, whether it be science fiction, fantasy, horror, mystery, crime, thriller, it really doesn't matter. You probably know the name John Joseph Adams if you have read any sort of anthology. The only person I can think of off the top of my head that's been involved in more anthologies is probably Allan. But John Joseph Adams, he has stamped his name on so many of these anthologies, and so many of them are great and worth picking up. This is one in particular that I've been interested in for a while. Finally got the chance to, I actually listened to it as an audiobook, and it was pretty decent. I decided on a 3.5 star, maybe 4 stars. Typical anthology fashion. There were some that just didn't work for me. I think the main issue was that a few of the stories did have a sort of sameness to them, which was a little bit of a disappointment, because I mean, you have this cool concept of the mad scientist, and I hoped that a few of the authors would take it in directions that I hadn't thought of, and some did, but others kind of did exactly what I expected, you know? I think the other reason that it got a somewhat lower rating for me is because a lot of it focuses more on the humorous side, and as you know, humorous fiction doesn't generally work for me. So 3.5 on this one, still worth picking up. Really cool cover, and hey, if this one doesn't work for you, John Joseph Adams has so many more anthologies under his belt. There are definitely some that that will work for any sort of reader. Alright, book number 2. This is one that I debated on picking up because it was just such a time-consuming thing. But man, I'm glad I did. This is Kate Elliott with Prince of Dogs. And Prince of Dogs is book 2 of the Crown of Stars series. I read the first one the month prior. Took a while to get into it, but it really drew me in by the end. My issue was that this is part of, I think, a 7-book series that encompasses nearly 6,000 pages. And I just didn't know if I wanted to continue with that sort of, page count hanging over my head, basically. But I decided, you know what? I enjoyed the first one. Why not give the second one a read? Just see how it goes. And man, I'm glad I did, because the second one, I feel like it blew the first one out of the water. And to be fair, the first one had a lot of information to kind of dump on us, to get us into the story before we could really get something going. Whereas book number 2, we were really able to jump right into the action, directly preceding the end of book 1. And it was fantastic. I fully intend to pick up book 3 in the series. I'm very, very much enjoying it. It is dark, it is gritty. Well, if you're looking for something that's kind of almost historical fiction with a little bit of fantasy mixed in, then this might be a really great series for you. And at least up to book 2, I can tell you it's fantastic and well worth picking up. Some of you have seen the journey of my sibling and I reading this book. It took way too long. It was our fault. We both had a ton of stuff going on that prevented us from reading it together. But at long last, in September, we finished Brie Paulson's Garlic and the Vampire. And this book was a blast. It's great. It is, it's a graphic novel. Fantastic artwork all throughout. The story is excellent. It's humorous and entertaining and strangely dark. And this is one of those books that it really truly does not matter your age group. Anybody can pick this up and find enjoyment in it. And I have recently found out that there is a book 2 already, so that's how long it took us to read this one. If you were looking for something whimsical, but also kind of unsettling in its implications, perhaps something that you can read with your child, then Garlic and the Vampire is definitely one for you. All right, book number 4 is R.E. Hayes with Nightmare Island. Now, this book is not actually on Goodreads, so you will not see this on there. I have put in something through the gods of Goodreads to ask them to add this book in so that it can be enjoyed by others, and so that I can count it towards my yearly goal. But as of yet, it's not on there, and I really couldn't find anything else about this book or the author. The cover is a very, very classic setup for a gothic read of that time. I will say it surprised me a little bit. The main character in this book is a woman named Heather. She's actually a marine biologist who is sent to this little island, Nightmare Island, if you will, to help a fellow researcher on a big project. She really doesn't quite know what's going on, actually. She's just accepted this because she is just out of a bad engagement that she broke off. So she joins up kind of out of the loop to begin with, and obviously creepy stuff happens. The place itself is spooky in the typical gothic fashion, and I was surprised not only by the character herself, because marine biology isn't something that immediately jumps to mind in regards to a gothic read, but I was surprised by the level of violence in this book. There are times where it gets violent and rather graphic, and I didn't expect that. But overall, there were certainly some disappointing aspects, mostly in the somewhat misogynistic way that certain characters go about things. It's somewhat to be expected, I suppose, but regardless, this is a pretty good one. I'd like to say that it ended up around a 3.5, 4 stars for me. Wasn't perfect, definite issues, but did surprise me in certain ways. And well worth picking up if you can find it, because it does not seem to be an easy book to find. Next up, we have Alice Hoffman with Incasation. This was the book that Paige gave me to read this month, actually. And, you know, I really don't want to give too much away. I think this is one of those books where the less you know going in, the better. So all I'm going to say is that it is heartbreaking. It will tug at your heartstrings. It's a beautiful book. I mean, I'm just going to suggest that I really don't want to ruin anything. I'm going to suggest picking it up. If you have read Alice Hoffman before, then you probably know what to expect, because she has a style, and her books tend to be rather emotionally charged, and this one absolutely is. It was 5 stars. I loved it, but man, it's upsetting. It's very upsetting, so go in with that warning. Alright, first truly atrocious read of the month. This was Donald Thompson with The Ancient Enemy. And this was really upsetting. I was expecting a world taken over by cockroaches. The cockroaches are often forgotten about, in fact, which is pretty crazy because they describe it as, you know, like a living sea of cockroaches. And I haven't really told you much about this book. I'm not going to tell you much about this book. The best part of it is absolutely the cover. Cover is super cool. The back offers you all sorts of promises, and then as soon as you're engaged to it, it pulls back from those promises and just disappoints you in every imaginable way. So 1 star on this one. It's not worth picking up unless you just want to have a cool cover. That's about all it's worth. All right, following that, R.L. Stein with a Fear Street book, The Fire Game. And this one is a very typical Stein setup. Girl moves to a town, makes friends. The friends get into trouble together. In this case, they start the fire game, where someone accidentally starts a small fire. They find an odd amount of enjoyment out of it and decide to continue upping the ante in that regard. The villain, if you will, of this one is very predictable. There was a surprising scene where someone dies, which is kind of crazy because that doesn't typically happen in an R.L. Stein novel. But overall, it was okay. Certainly not the best. The ending in particular really fell flat, but I gave it 2.5 stars. It was all right, and it's so short that you can, read it in one sitting. But there is definitely better out there. Unfortunately, my second Stein of the month was not the better out there book that I was hoping for. This is from the series 2000. This is Fright Camp. And Fright Camp is just about that. It is about 2 brothers who get sent to a very special camp for horror lovers, where they never really know if these scares are real or not. Sounds great. Very reminiscent of the Horrorland books from Stein. The major difference being that the original Horrorland book is fantastic. This one, not so much. Stupid decisions are made. A lot of things just don't make any sense at all. In fact, it was 2 stars. It just really fell flat for me. I'd rather just pick up One Day at Horrorland, honestly. All right, next up is a little poetry. This is Transformations by Anne Sexton. And this sort of takes some of the classic fairy tales and gives them, in some ways, a feminist approach, in other ways, just a very sexual approach. It was certainly not my favorite, but there was some good stuff in here. A few of them really fell flat for me, though. I think I gave it 3.5 stars at the end of the day. I'm glad I picked it up, and I would not have picked it up were it not for Mr. Troy Tradup. So once again, I appreciate that man. He has given me some excellent suggestions in the course of the last year. And yeah, this is, like I said, there's definitely some good stuff in here, but a few of them just felt like they tried too hard to be something else, you know? Now for the book that my dear mother got me. This is The Everything Guide to Edgar Allan Poe. That handsome devil could have been my daddy. So this was my only nonfiction of the month. Probably my only nonfiction in the last couple of months. But this is just what it says it is. This is all about Mr. Edgar Allan Poe. This was 3.5 stars for me. There were definitely some interesting tidbits in here. I'm just giving a feel for who the man was, giving a little more information than most people will probably know about him. That said, the book is tremendously biased and a lot of times is very much against Poe, which I found interesting. It kind of paints him out to be a major jerk. And like I said, I found that interesting. I don't know why you would choose to write a biography about someone if you clearly don't like them. So I don't know what that was about. But I did find some new information, or some information that I had forgotten about previously about Poe, thanks to this book. And overall, it was good. I think it is better for someone that already goes in with a knowledge of Poe, so that you are not influenced by some of the things that are just completely misinformed in this book. But aside from that, there's a lot of good information here as well. Enjoyed it, 3.5 stars. Very grateful to my dear mother for getting me this. After that, I jumped into a book that has been on my list for years, and I finally got to read it. This is Will Elliott with the Pilo Family Circus. This was a weird book, man. I went into it just expecting outright horror, and it's not. I mean, there's some horrific stuff, but there's also very much a touch of the fantastical, and it's just, it's weird, man. It's a mind trip, you know? So this book is about a man named Jamie who is out late one night, and he sees a clown fall off of a building and then get back up, and another clown comes out, and it starts this argument. He finds a baggie that one of them dropped. They start chasing him for the baggie. He wakes up in his apartment, and some damage has been done, and there is a note that's saying he has 2 days to pass his audition for the circus, or horrible things will happen. Good luck, Jamie. And that's kind of where we kick things off. And you can probably kind of tell from that this is a zany read, and it absolutely is. It took me a long time to decide how I felt about this book, because there are parts of it that are really excellent, and others that just felt bizarre and unnecessary. I'm looking at you, sex scene between a plant and one of the clowns. Yeah, that's right, that happens. I decided on a 3.5 star read. I will say this, there's really not much else out there like it. And the main reason that I finally decided to read it is because I got the follow-up for $2 off of eBay. So now I have the follow-up. I'm going to get to that soon. I don't know if it's going to be as bizarre as the first one was, but Like I said, it's not outright horror. It's definitely not outright horror. I don't know what the heck to call it exactly, but it's gross. It's gross, and there is horror. Like I said, there's also elements of the supernatural and of the fantastical with creatures that should not exist, with things that are just unexplainable altogether. This book is all over the place. There are times where it's just humorous and funny, other times where you don't know what the heck is going on or what direction the book is taking. It tugs you in one direction to another and keeps you off balance the whole time. And I think that's really mostly the point. So 3.5, maybe 4 stars. It's just a very disorienting experience, and I'm pretty sure that's what Will Elliott was going for. Alright, next book was one that I was very excited for, just based off the cover. This is Platt F. Clark with Bad Unicorn. We talked about this. Awesome front cover, way cooler back cover, just all kinds of zany going on there. This is about a boy named Max Spencer who owns a book called The Codex of Infinite Knowability. And he does not know where it came from. He's just kind of always had it. And one day he starts reading from it and drawing pictures of some of the creatures in it. And his friend is like, hey dude, there's nothing in that book. It's just squiggles. None of it makes sense. I don't know what you're looking at. I don't know where you're getting this stuff. So he starts delving into the mystery of the Codex. He asks this guy that runs a comic book shop that they enjoy, and he has some answers that don't really make sense to Max, but that absolutely send him spiraling into a crazy adventure fighting against Princess the Destroyer, aka the most dangerous unicorn in most realms. This book is crazy. I will say there were moments that I just wanted to continue on to get to the good stuff again, you know, but this is one of the very few books that have made me laugh out loud. I can't remember the last time that's happened. There's so many great one-liners, so many paragraphs that were just outright funny that I kept sharing with my wife. And so even though there are shortcomings and the book did not necessarily take the direction that I had hoped it would, this was 5 stars for me. The simple fact that I don't like humorous stuff. But this book had me laughing from beginning to end, and that says something. So, 5 stars. There are, I think, 2 other books in this series that I would like to pick up because I think they're going to be just as much fun as this one is. This would be a good book, again, if you want to read it with your kids who are maybe, slightly older. Great stuff. It is a long one, especially for a kid's book. I mean, it's over 400 pages, but very enjoyable and goes by very quickly. All right, now I mentioned Ellen Datlow earlier, and so there is an anthology on here headed by her. This is Body Shocks, and I'm not going to take a whole lot of time to talk about it, other than to say that this is a very much an above-average collection. If you're into body horror, you need to pick this one up. Read it in a physical copy, in an ebook, listen to it, whatever it may be. This is one of those rare anthologies where even the lesser stories are still better than what you'll find in most anthologies. So very impressive, very impressed by the diversity of the stories and the concepts that they bring. 5 stars, excellent collection, highly going to suggest it. Next up is Gavin Gardner with For Rye. I had heard excellent things about this book going in. Didn't really know the story itself though, but this is a rather dark one. There should probably be warnings about abuse, physical and mental, and certain people are going to get very uncomfortable in this book. Probably don't want to read it, probably don't want to pick it up. I'm going to say on this one, just do your research to know what you're getting into, because it goes through some dark places that a lot of people aren't going to be able to handle. That said, there were moments that felt a little over the top to me, but overall this was an excellent experience. I gave it 4 stars at the end of the day because I felt like one of the main points, one of the main twists was maybe forced in there a little too much and a little too convenient. But when this book works, it works very well, very effective, and it's going to make you squirm. All right. Really not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one because you guys know how I'm going to feel about it. This is R.L. Stein's newest short story collection called Stein Tinglers. And I was super excited because this is my very first signed R.L. Stein book. I can't tell you how happy this book made me, man. The stories were fantastic. If you're a Stein fan, you're going to love this one, whether you're an adult, a kid, whatever. Awesome collection. Feels like classic R.L. Stein. 5 stars. I loved it, and I am so thankful to finally have a signed R.L. Stein. This was Robert Sheckley with Citizen in Space. And this is another collection for him with I don't know how many short stories. Some of his stuff is definitely on the humorous side, or some of it actually just outright ridiculous. They're so bizarre and out there that I wonder what prompted the man to sit down and write a story about it. To begin with, I mean, I'm just gonna, on the back here, it introduces you to some of the characters from some of the stories. Meet Tom Fisher, the only man on the planet of New Delaware with a skulking permit. Morton D., a wizard's son, he wants to be an accountant. Dengu, he knows why the mountain cannot be moved. Mavis O'Day, a spy on a spaceship. She's disguised as a 100-pound sack of potatoes. There you go. That tells you all it needs to tell you. This book is weird. It's science fiction, I guess, but it is light on the science. And some of it is just so bizarre, man. Best story is absolutely The Accountant, about a boy who is... his whole family are wizards, and they want him to be a wizard. He does not want to be a wizard. He wants to be an accountant. That's my favorite story in this one. That one is well worth reading, very entertaining. Some of the stories just fell super flat for me. 3 stars, not the greatest collection, but there is some entertainment to be found there. Next we have Vile Visions by Riley Odell. Kind of similar to what I said with Robert Sheckley there. Some outright bizarre story ideas here, followed by others that are just, typical horror tropes that are maybe twisted a little bit. 3 stars overall, an average collection. If you were interested in what Riley Odell writes, well, then pick this one up. It does have a really unique cover, we'll say. 4 stars for James A. Moore with Possessions. This one could have been 5 stars, but there were certain elements that held it back. This is one where it is better not to read the back blurb because it doesn't really follow the sequence of events properly, and it maybe gives away a little too much at the same time. This is about a boy who has lost his mother whilst trying to overcome that grief and sort of turn his life around, if you will. He is attacked. He fights back to the best of his ability and kind of realizes that this guy might not be human. And what him and his cronies are here for is something that was left to Chris in his will by his mother. Although he doesn't know what it is or why they want it, he just knows that these guys are very dangerous. The body count starts rising. Some crazy stuff happens. This was one of those books where I wanted to give it 5 stars so much. I gave it 4 stars because there are some definite issues, but this book was so much fun. It had some just crazy scenes in it, man. I shared one on Goodreads that I think perfectly embodies how disturbing this book can get, about a guy stepping all over a fresh corpse and the skin, you know, sliding off of its face and getting stuck on a shoe and all this stuff. And it's just, man, it's crazy. It's out there. I loved it. I'm really looking forward to picking up the follow-up to it called Rapid Growth. I have it over there in my stack. Probably going to try and get to it this coming month. Don't let the 4 stars deceive you. If you're just in a book and can ignore the issues, this is a great one for you. Alright, the only other audiobook that I listened to was Little by Little, written by John Little. This is a collection of his sort of best of the best stories. This is a guy that is mostly known for the novella Miranda, which is included in Little by Little, of course. And I had been interested in picking up Miranda for a long time. It won all kinds of awards. It is a story about a man who lives his life in reverse from everybody else. He wakes up one day, he is an old decrepit man in a hospital, and everybody around him is doing everything in reverse. They pull medicine out of him. When they're feeding him, it is sucked out of him and basically becomes whole again on the plate. When he's using the restroom, again, things work in reverse. It's super weird, super disturbing in some of its implications and in some of its casual mentions of the way things work in reverse. But eventually he does find Miranda, who also lives her life in reverse. It's the only other person he has found that does, and they begin a very tumultuous relationship. Now, in addition to this, there are a bunch of other short stories, of course. Some of these standouts including Ursa Major, which is about a man who is trying to develop a relationship with his new stepdaughter. He decides to take her on a trip to a cabin, and they are trapped there by a giant bear who decides he is going to make a meal out of them. Man, it's stuff like that. This was a fantastic collection. I friggin' loved it. If I can get a hold of it in a paperback version, I will. If you can listen to it in the audio version, you 100% should, because it is great. Loved every minute of it. These are some very original stories. All of them very well written, very well told. Fantastic collection. One of the best that I have experienced in a long time. All right, now I'm slowly working my way through the Chronicles of Pride in books again. Now that I have them all, I read the first one the month previous, September. I read Black Cauldron again, even though I did read it last year. My thoughts have not changed. It's still 5 stars, still very enjoyable, lots of laughs, great for a young audience, great for an older audience. Most people are familiar with the movie The Black Cauldron, if nothing else. I did not realize how old these books were, or how many of them there were, but I now have the full collection. When I get to the third, we'll see how this goes, but book 1 was really good. Book 2, I think, was better, and we'll see how book 3 goes. And then the very last one of September was Your Worst Fears by Hannah Costin. Could have potentially been 2.5, could have been 3. The main issue, and I think the reason that it gets a 2.5 instead of a 3 for being an average collection, is that this one had a lot of grammatical errors, and that's hard for me to look past. So I think I have to give it a 2.5. If some of those errors can be corrected, maybe it gets a 3. It was okay, it wasn't great, it wasn't my favorite, and probably even more disappointing because I had finished Little by Little, which was an outstanding short story collection. So it had a little bit against it there, but there you go. That's my wrap up for September. This is a long video, I know it is. I will gift you some cat footage in an upcoming one. This is just me trying to get back into things. I'm sorry if my voice is weird, or if this whole video has a sort of different tone to it. it's going to take me a little while to get back into the groove of things, but as always, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you can pick some of these books up, because there were definitely some excellent books here that I really hope others will read. If you have any questions, ask them below. If you have any suggestions, tell them to me below, or reach out via email, etc., etc. Thank you. Stay safe. Drink great coffee. Cheers.